Good afternoon or good morning. Maybe it's good evening. For some of you, it's good night. Wait. That doesn't mean go to sleep. We've got a lot of store for you, but I just heard from our friends in Vietnam, and they set their alarm because it's the middle of the night to be a part of this Leading Through Crisis Summit. Now, why is that? Why are you tuning in? Why is the world tuning in? We literally have 10,000 or thousands of people, it's much more than 10, thousands of people both watching live as well as being and involving themselves in the replay over the next 4 days. We've been working on this for the last several days, and the whole time that my team, we've been working on this, we've had you, our thoughts, our prayers have been on you around the globe. My name is Mark Cole. I've been the CEO and president of John Maxwell's organization for the last 10 years, both his profit and nonprofit. And as we've prepared to have a response for this time, we've realized a couple of things. One, we've realized our responsibility to be prayerful, to be mindful, to be concerned and considerate of the people and the lives that have been disrupted because of the coronavirus. We've also realized that our responsibility, John's responsibility, is to give a leadership response. In fact, on John's phone, I started to have you bring this, John, but on the back of John's phone, he has a picture of a salt shaker and a picture of a light bulb. And he has this one statement that says, "Be these." You see, our brand, John's Life, is about making the world brighter, being a light, and making the world better, being salt. Our goal, if you distill it all the way down, our goal in these next 4 days is to be salt and light for you, to make your world just a little brighter, to make your world just a little better, to give you an understanding of how leaders respond in and through difficult times. Now, I've worked alongside you, John, for 20 years. I was with you for the U.S. on September the 11th, 2001. Many of you will remember that. It was a crisis that, yes, impacted the United States and, to be honest with you, impacted the world. John, I was working alongside you then. I was also around John on his team in 2007 and 2008 when the world experienced a global financial crisis. And I've got to tell you that what I have seen from you, John, is during times of crisis, better leadership, brighter leadership, salt and light leadership. And that's what we extend to you today. I have an incredible team, John. We have an incredible team of brilliant people that has made today possible for you to live stream on Facebook, for you to watch on John's website, johnmaxwell.com, and for you to have an opportunity to watch through YouTube and through LinkedIn. We've been working hard so that this guy right here that has led through crisis, not just in crisis, but led through and challenged others to lead through. So get a pen, get a piece of paper, join us for the next 60 to 90 minutes. Be back here same time, same place tomorrow at noon, Tuesday at noon, and then Wednesday, John and I are going to do an open forum question and answer, all because we want to help this world lead brighter and lead better. I know if you were in studio with us today, and you're not because, John, we're social distancing, but if you were in here today, I know that you would help me welcome a guy that for 73 years has been preparing for moments like this to show that leadership still can have a voice louder than the noise. John, thank you so much for helping us today.
Oh, thank you, Mark. And I'm so honored to be with you and excited about our time together, not only today, but over the next few days also. And when I talk about leading through a crisis, I really want to talk about this title for a moment because it's highly possible that you're sitting there and you're saying, wait a minute, I'm not a leader. In fact, John, I wish you would just talk about how to get through a crisis because that's where I am. I'm not leading anybody. I just want to get myself through this crisis. Well, the next 2 days, not today, but the next 2 days, I will be talking about how to take adversity and make it an advantage in your life because you see, there is opportunity in every difficulty. So the next 2 days, I'm going to really be talking about not only how to get through a crisis, but I'm going to talk to you about how to get better in a crisis. But today, because my life is leadership, and because I'm talking literally to tens and tens and tens of thousands of leaders today, I want to help you. And by the way, you say, well, I'm not a leader. Yes, you are. How do I define leadership? Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. You have to understand that if you have any influence with anybody, if you're a parent, you're a leader. If you're a neighbor, you're a leader. Anybody that has influence with others, they have some leadership within them. So this is for all of us. I know we're going to get a lot of benefit out of it, but I'm known for leadership. In fact, I'm known for a statement: everything rises and falls on leadership. That's true. But let me talk to you about a crisis, because everything rises and falls on leadership. In a crisis, if you're a bad leader, if I'm a bad leadership, the fall in a crisis is much faster. It exaggerates in a negative way, because crisis has a tendency to exaggerate everything, positive or negative. And so in a crisis, if I don't lead well, instead of me just slowly taking my team down, I can fall pretty fast with them. Now, if you're a good leader during a crisis, it's not that same extreme in a positive way. Bad leadership, the fall is fast. In good leadership, the fall sometimes, or the rise is sometimes not much of a rise. Sometimes in a crisis, a leader's just holding everything steady. We're not growing, we're not getting better, but we're just holding steady, knowing that this too shall pass. But everything rises and falls on leadership. And the main difference between good and bad leaders is most easily observed during a crisis. A crisis shows leaders up. A leader is supposed to show up in a crisis, but what happens is the crisis shows the leader up. Often I ask this question because it's always interesting to me, because my whole world is leadership. I'll ask somebody, why do you want to be a leader? Well, they'll give me all kinds of answers, but for this lesson today, I just want you to know that a crisis brings the best out of me. I can tell you that when difficulties arise, I want to lead. There are times when things are going really well, and to be honest with you, I don't really have to lead that much, or my team can lead and sometimes do much better than I do. But during a crisis, during difficult times, I look at this crisis and I say, I was born for this. This is my time. This is my moment to help people, to add value to people, because that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do for you today. So there's a goal in this lesson. It's a simple goal. I want us together to learn more about what a crisis is so that we can better lead others in that crisis. This is going to be a lesson on perspective. I will continually come back to this thought. How we view things determines how we do things. The only difference is if I'm a follower, how I view things determines how I do things, and it just involves me. But as a leader, if how I view things is how I do things, it not only involves me, but it involves so many people. In fact, I'm very aware that while I'm talking to you now in countries all around the world, that there are tens and tens of thousands of people with me, and that what I say, what I share is going to have an impact, hopefully a very helpful, positive impact. So let's get started. How do you and I become a good leader in a bad, difficult crisis? Well, let me give you some very simple thoughts quickly, and then I'm going to dive a little bit deeper. Number one, if you want to be a good leader and help people through a crisis, your number one priority is to put the people first. Now, this is easy because the number one priority always for a leader, good times, bad times, is to put the people first. In this case, with the coronavirus, it's the safety of the people. But what leaders know is that when they take on the mantle of leadership, it's all about the people. It's not about me. I gave up my rights to put me first when I became a leader. It's all about you. And it's all about how can I help you, serve you, lift you, love you. You know, Mark, in the introduction, talked about how our prayers are with people that have already been infected with the virus. And this is a very difficult time. And in everything that I say today, I do not want to minimize the crisis that we are in. We are in a world crisis. But I also do not want to minimize the role that leadership has in a crisis, which is to help people get through it, and not only get through it, but to become better because of it. But if you're leading people in a crisis, the first priority is all about the people. Always has been, always will be. But if you're not in a crisis, I got good news for you. Your first priority is still people first. It's all about them. Now that we have that settled, and by the way, so many times leadership puts themselves before others in a crisis, and that crisis just begins to multiply in the lives of so many people. That's always wrong. It's always wrong. The second thing we need to do is to be a good leader during a crisis is to educate ourselves. In other words, know what the issue really is. Now, there's a lot of uncertainties about the coronavirus, but I'm talking about knowing and educating and getting our best mind around what this issue really is. And by the way, if you're going to educate yourself, okay, my name's John, I'm your friend. I wouldn't really go to the media. I'm not trying to be nasty, but the media has other agendas. Politicians have other agendas, and if you really want to educate yourself, I would go to the World Health Organization, WHO. The World Health Organization gives you a daily situation report that you can depend upon its accuracy. It doesn't have other agendas. Or the Center for Disease Control, CDC, they have a website. So I would encourage you to get it educated and know what you're dealing with as a leader. I would go to those stories, okay, and to those sources. So let me just say a few encouraging things. First of all, we know what this virus is. You know, when AIDS came out in 1981, it took 2 years to really identify the virus, HIV, that was causing the disease. It took 2 years. With COVID-19, literally on December 31st, the issue was reported in China, and by January the 7th, the virus had already been identified. I just want to encourage you that there have been much more uncertain times of just even knowing what the virus is, much more uncertain times than what we're going through right now with the coronavirus. Number two, we know how to detect the virus. In fact, since January the 13th, we've literally had tests available that can detect the virus. This is a plus. That's essential. Number three, many of the cases that there are no symptoms or they're mild symptoms. Every time we hear that, we all rejoice over that. Number four, relatively few cases occur to people under 20. And number five, the mortality rate under 40 is quite small. Number six, the virus can be wiped clean. And number seven, science is on it globally. Back in 2003, during the SARS epidemic, it took over a year for us to get less information upon SARS epidemic than it did for us to get on the coronavirus. So there are some good things happening. That also there's already some vaccine prototypes. So I just want you to know that we need to as leaders to have a healthy knowledge of what we're dealing with. So people first, educate yourself. Number three, be flexible. A crisis has a lot of uncertainty and it has a lot of change. I wrote a book about a year and a half ago called Leader Shift. And the whole theme of that book is how to be adaptable, adjustable, flexible, so that as you're moving your people and leading your people, when plan A isn't working, you can go to plan B. And sometimes in a crisis, to be honest with you, you've got to have a plan C or even a plan D. But flexibility is very important for leaders to be able to lead people through the landmines of that crisis. Number four, leverage your team. In other words, utilize your team. Bring your team together because as they come together, you've got one vision, one mission, but you do have different perspectives. It's just this simple. All of us is not as smart, or all of us is smarter than one of us. So if I'm just doing this by myself, I'm not going to get what I need. I need my team around me to give me those different perspectives. Kim Blanchard's the one, by the way, that said all of us are smarter than just one of us. Number 5, communicate judiciously more than continually. Now, judiciously is a huge word. You know me, I'm a communicator. I take complicated things and make them simple. That's really not a Maxwell word, judiciously, but it's the only word I could think of here. Judiciously means use good judgment. In other words, less talking, more thinking. And when you communicate with thinking weight. Good discernment, good judgment. People don't always need more communication, but they do need wise communication. Number 6, be authentic. Authenticity is what people want in leadership. They want that even more than perfection. They don't want a perfect leader, but they do want an authentic leader. And for over 50 years, when Mark was introducing me, and I'm 73, I've been doing this leadership game a long time, and I think that my greatest asset to people is authenticity. I've been around a long time. People love me. People believe me. People trust me. I spent a long time earning that trust. And so when I say be authentic in your leadership or my leadership, what am I saying? I'm saying things like this. Always tell the truth. Put the people first. Stay close to the people. Let them visually be with you as possible. I know social distancing. I got it. I also want you to know authenticity means that uncertainty is okay. You don't have to have all the answers. In fact, no leader has all the answers. In fact, I don't know if there's anything more disgusting than a leader that's pretending to have answers during difficult times, uncertain times. Do the right thing. That's an authentic leader. Keep your head above the crowd. You want to be in the crowd, but you want to be above the crowd. If your head's not above the crowd, you're not seeing the big picture. You're just seeing the crowd. And when you see the crowd, that's not the direction you want to go. And encourage others by example. These are just authentic moves, actions that we can have that attract people to us. And then I would just say one other thing, and that is manage yourself. Manage yourself. People ask me sometimes, they say, John, what's your most difficult leadership challenge? My most difficult leadership challenge is leading me. It's easy to tell you what to do. It's easy to speak to a few 100,000 people today. But just trust me, it's much harder for me to do the right thing. And so I'm doing my best to do the things I think right now during this virus are helpful, which is socially distancing myself from others, continually washing my hands, just doing the things that I know will help the process. I want to lead by example. Manage yourself so that you can lead your people. So now I want to give you 5 comments about crisis. I want us to see crisis in the right perspective. And in the end, I want us to see crisis through the eyes of a leader. But let me just give you 5 comments on crisis. Number 1 is a crisis is quite common. This is not the first crisis on earth. There's a tendency during a crisis. Here's what happens. There's a tendency during a crisis for a couple things that happen that aren't positive. There's a tendency to think that it's never been this bad before. We're the only ones that have ever experienced this. And it's very possible for us to kind of over-exaggerate our place in history and the crisis that we're within in its place in history also. Now, I'm going to get back to that in a moment. I often teach, you've heard me teach, that there are no 2 good consecutive days in a leader's life. I just think that's true. I think leaders deal with too many issues, problems, that there's just never 2 easy days, problem-free days in any leader's life. But a crisis means that there's more than 2 bad days in a leader's life. There's a whole bunch of bad days in a leader's life, and they just keep coming, and they sometimes even pile on. But let's think about it for a moment. Crisis is very common. Well, let me just take you back in the last 20 years. In the year 2000, Do you remember Y2K? I remember it. Oh, my. Everything was going to go bad when we turned to the year 2000, and people were, saving food up and, just to be honest with you, doing all kind of crazy things. Back in 2000, we said, Y2K it's going to kill us all. We're all going to be in deep weeds. I can remember as a leader in Y2K, very clearly telling people that they were wrong, that it wasn't going to be that bad. In fact, I was in Jacksonville speaking to 2,500 leaders, and we were in a Q&A, and I had one of the leaders stand and say, John, what are you doing to prepare for Y2K? And I said, the only thing I'm doing to prepare people for Y2K, or myself, is to tell people it's not going to be like they think it's going to be. And he looked at me and said, well, what happens if you're wrong? Well, I said, then I'll come and live with you. You seem to have your act together. Now, let me just explain something to you. Back at Y2K, a whole bunch of people said the sky is falling. 2001, anthrax. Oh, it's going to kill us. Be careful not to open that envelope. 2002, the West Nile virus. Oh, that virus, it's going to get us. SARS was in 2003. How about the bird flu back in 2005? E. coli. Wow. 2006. Oh, my. The bad economy in 2008. It's the end. It's never been so bad. 2009, it was the swine flu. How about BP oil back in 2010? Okay, we're in trouble there. And then remember the Mayan calendar is talking about the end times? That was in 2012. How about 2013 when North Korea is going to kill us all? The Ebola virus was back in 2014. We had the Disney measles in 2015. And if it wasn't the Disney measles, it was going to be ISIS. I remember being in some very serious conversations about ISIS and this incredible terrorist crisis that we had. 2016, it was the Zika virus, and now 2020, it's the coronavirus. And I'm just telling you that I'm not trying to minimize this virus at all. Listen to me. My name is John. I'm your friend. I'm not trying to make fun of any crisis. I'm not trying to make light of any virus. Just look at me for a moment. When people are in a crisis, their tendency is to think that it's never been this bad before. And I just want you to know, it's been this bad before. Do you want to live in 1918, 19 and 20, when the flu was killing at one time 1 million people a week? I'm not trying to minimize what we're going through. It's very serious. I take it very serious. I pray every day for this crisis to be over. I'm not at all trying to minimize it, but I am saying to you that when you're in a crisis, the tendency is it's kind of like minor surgery, major surgery. Minor surgeries when it's on you, and major surgeries when it's on me. That's the way it is with a crisis. Minor surgery minor crisis was something that happened 10 years ago or 100 years ago. Oh my, but major crisis is what we're going through right now. And the reason I'm saying this is leaders, do not miss this point. Leaders always give a right perspective to people during a crisis. They don't always have the answers. There's a lot of uncertainty, but their perspective, a good leader's perspective, is what gives hope, security, and encouragement. So what is a crisis? Well, the dictionary says a crisis is a time of intense difficulty or danger. Got it. That's a crisis. In the medical field, if you ask them what a crisis was, they would say it's a turning point. When a patient is in a crisis, they're at a turning point where it's either going to get better for them or it's going to get worse for them. If you go just to the Greek and how they defined a crisis was they said it's a decision. So I took the three, the dictionary, the medical, and the Greek words, and basically let me tell you what a crisis is. A crisis is an intense time of difficulty requiring a decision that will be a turning point. That's what a crisis is. It's an intense time of difficulty. That's what the dictionary says. Requiring a decision. That's what the Greek says. That will be at a turning point. That's what medical people say. And that's why I'm sharing with you how to lead through a crisis. Because as a leader, we can make a difference. You see, Max Dupree said the first responsibility of a leader is define reality. And the reality is This is a crisis. We need to take it serious. We need to do everything in our power to make sure that we do the things that are necessary for us to be able to slow it down, stop it, turn it around. But here's what I know. Just like every other crisis in the world, there have been thousands of them, my friend. Thousands of crises. Like every crisis, the wisest man who ever lived was named Solomon. And what did Solomon say? This too shall pass. So back in 1918, when the Spanish flu affected 25 million people, and in 25 weeks they died, 25% of the world population was infected with that flu. Wow. Dark, dark days. This too shall pass. By the way, those words, this too shall pass, not only encourage us during a crisis, but they sober us up during the good times. Because in the good times, we want them to last forever. And I can tell you right now, when things are at the very best and your business is going great and your health is going great and your family is doing well, this too shall pass. Life never stays static. A crisis, it's common. The second comment on crisis is that a crisis is distracting. We use the term distraction, but I want to insert in this teaching right now the word traction, because traction is the opposite of distraction. You see, traction means to pull forward or to draw forward. It means that there's a momentum to move in the right direction. You've gained traction. You're making progress. Distraction is the opposite. It means to pull away. So when a crisis comes, it begins to pull us away. It begins to distract us. It begins to take us off course. It begins to confuse our priorities. It keeps us from making progress. So if traction is the action that draws us toward what we want in life, distraction are the actions that pull us away from the things that we want in our life. If you want to get distracted, just watch the TV news. Wow, I think we just need to fast from some of that. Honestly, their agenda is not always accurate reporting. They've got an agenda behind them. And let me just say this. As a leader, I hope you have no agenda except you put the people first every time. You see, that's the only thing as a leader that's going to keep me from falling and being a bad leader, because there's not much difference between manipulating a people and motivating them. Manipulating people is when I move you for my advantage. And so many times during a crisis, that's what leaders do. It's always wrong. It's wrong for leaders to do it. It's wrong for politicians to do it. It's wrong for the media to do it. It's wrong. What part of wrong don't we understand? But when we put the people first, when we have no agenda except lift people, serve people, add value to people, it helps us to keep some sort of traction in a time of distraction. Well, what's the results of distraction? Mind wandering. What do? Our mind begins to wonder. We begin to ask questions like, what could happen and what is happening and we begin to ask questions that there are no answers to. Or negative thinking, everything is going wrong and it's never going to get better, or an uncertainty, anxiety, where we begin to look around and we begin to be dominated by fears. And let me tell you something, this crisis is a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm for distraction, and fear is spreading faster than the virus. I say this in kindness. Just because your sky is falling doesn't mean my sky is falling. Now, are we in the same crisis? Yes. Are we in the same danger? Absolutely. But do we have the same perspective? Possibly not. I mean, my life has gone to pieces as far as my agenda and my priorities. I write, I speak, for April, May, I was traveling around the world speaking. They're all canceled. I'm not speaking anywhere. Who wants to be with people? I don't want to be with people. I don't want to speak until this thing's all taken care of. So somebody the other day called me and said, how are you doing? I said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm making lemonade. When given a lemon, make lemonade. So what am I doing? Am I speaking? No, that's canceled. It's all changed. Hey, that's a financial fallout. That's a leadership fall. I mean, I can give you all kind of fallouts from that. Of course I can. But what am I going to do? I can't control that. Nothing will cause you more anxiety than trying to control something you can't control. And yet I watch people every day, I don't know, somehow reach out there with worry, thinking that anxiety and that worry will make things better for them. So what am I doing? Well, I'm reading books that I haven't been able to read for a while. I'm getting to write a book that I didn't have enough time to really write, and now I can write it. And hey, because I'm writing it now, it's the most important book I've ever written. Hey, I'm getting to exercise. I'm getting to spend time with my family. I can give you a whole list of things right now that I'm doing because of the crisis. So what do leaders do? Don't miss this point. Leaders help people get traction during distraction. And the first step of getting traction is getting rid of negative emotions. Wow. I'm going to read you something now. C.S. Lewis, many of you know that name, a brilliant apologetic, a brilliant mind, a tremendous educator, a writer whose writings today are still powerfully affected. I'm going to read you something that C.S. Lewis wrote 72 years ago, 1948. And it's going to ring with amazing relevance. The only thing I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, is he was talking about the atomic bomb back there because that was what people were greatly concerned about then. They had entered into the atomic bomb age. So the only thing I guess I'm asking you to do is substitute, if you want to, the atomic bomb with the coronavirus. Let me read. Just hang on. It's worth it. Mentally stay with me. In one way, we think a great deal too much of the atomic bomb. How are we going to live in an atomic age? I'm tempted to reply, why? As you would have lived in the 16th century, when the plague visited London almost every year, or as you would have lived in a Viking age, when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat any night, or indeed, as you're already living in the age of cancer, syphilis, paralysis, age of air raids, railway accidents, motor accidents, atomic bombs. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation. Believe me, dear sir or madam, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before the atomic bomb was invented, and quite a high percentage of us were going to die in unpleasant ways. We had indeed one very great advantage over our ancestors, anesthetics. It is perfectly ridiculous to go about whimpering and drawing long faces because the scientists have added one more chance of a painful or premature death to a world that is already bristled with such chances and in which death itself has no chance at all but certainty. This is the first point to be made. And the first action to be taken is to pull ourselves together. If we are going to be destroyed by an atomic bomb, let that bomb, when it comes, find us doing sensible and human things. Praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children, playing tennis, chatting to our friends over a pint and a game of darts. He was from England. Not huddled together like frightened sheep and thinking about bombs. They may break our bodies, but they need not dominate our minds, and that's huge. They may break our bodies, but they need not dominate our minds. In fact, if you're with somebody right now, I don't know, you may be in a family, with a couple, hope you're socially distancing, you're not with a lot of people, but if you're with somebody, just look at somebody right now and say, fear will not dominate me. I got a choice here. And if you're not with anybody, say it to yourself, say it out loud, fear will not dominate me. The third comment on crisis. A crisis reveals what is inside of us. You see, sometimes I hear people say, well, they were made in a crisis. Crises don't make us. Crises reveal us. When a crisis comes, whatever is on the inside is what will come out. When you squeeze an orange, guess what you get? Orange juice. When you squeeze a lemon, guess what you get? You get lemon juice. When a human being gets squeezed, what's inside, positive or negative, will come out. You see, choices make us, crises reveal us. And I want us to really understand this because we have control over our choices. We don't have control over our conditions. And if you're in a leadership role, I just want you to know you can't moan and lead at the same time. So figure it out. If you're going to lead, you and I have to be able to give people hope, and moaning doesn't give people hope. I don't know, perhaps you heard this kind of amusing about the woman who whined and basically she said, the whole world is against me. And, her friend came up and said, I got good news for you. The whole world isn't against you. And she kind of looked at her like surprised. She said, the whole world doesn't know you. Just, can you relax? I had an interesting conversation 3 years ago with a man named John Hope Bryant. Once in a while, I hope you have a conversation with people that when you finish that conversation, you walk away and you just say, I'm going to be a better person because of that. Now, John Hope Bryant wrote a book called Love Leadership. So I'm going to read from him like I did C.S. Lewis a moment ago for perspective. Now listen and just hang with me here for a moment. Most people find strength in things that are outside of them. Now that's a problem. If I find my strength from things that are outside of me, I'm going to have a problem. And then he goes on to say money, power, titles, wardrobes, cars. But most of the things that make a leader are on the inside. Integrity, wisdom, confidence, vulnerability, joy, passion, compassion, intuitions. These things come from life experience, from life's trials, from the deepest part of a person's soul. You can't fake them, and you can't buy them because they're not for sale. He goes on. My mentor, Reverend Murray, says, life asks a question of every leader that gauges their effectiveness and wisdom. The question? What have you been through? Following battle, King Arthur would have his knights line up before him and ask each one of them, show me your scars. And if none existed, he would say to the warrior, leave me and go get your scars. I've learned that authenticity counts, and that the best route to an authentic life is through your scars. As you earn them, you learn to drop the BS in your life, and you attach yourself to the substance in your life and to the substance in those around you. Precisely because of that history of loss, because we've had loss. Now catch this. Because of the history of loss, you never take yourself too seriously or get needlessly seduced by short-term materialism. In other words, loss helps to ground and mature a person. There's a hard lesson in life, setbacks. Just as steel is forged through fire, leaders are forged through loss. There can be no strength, no real inner growth without the pain of legitimate suffering. It's a scientific fact. You cannot have a rainbow without a storm. Loss is wisdom acquired early. Huge. Loss is wisdom acquired early. Where's it acquired? In difficult times, in crisis. Okay, reading just one more paragraph. Wisdom comes from dealing with your mess. All of it. But few people want to do that because it's just too much. Too much work, too much acknowledgement, too much remembering, too much pain. But I have found that there is freedom in surrendering to this work, to saying, yes, that happened, but it doesn't define me. What does not kill me will only make me stronger. I made a mistake, but I am not a mistake. I'm passionate about transformation. Anybody that knows me well knows that I have a dream, a bucket list. If you ask me my bucket list, I would like to see in my lifetime one country in the world be transformed. And so we make a very concentrated, intentional effort to help countries, and soon we're going to be doing it with communities even in America, to have transformation. And here's what we've discovered. We found out that transformation is impossible without people learning and living out good values. The transformation doesn't begin by a law. It doesn't begin by an edict. Wow, I had the privilege of a couple years ago being in Saudi Arabia, invited by the family, and the king had made an edict that by 2030 that the country would be transformed. And these people were beautiful to me, and I did my best to spend 3 days with them and help them understand transformation. And my last statement was that you don't bring transformation through the edict of a king or the law of the land. It doesn't happen, never has happened. Why are you still there? Transformation doesn't happen from something on the outside. It happens from something that happens on the inside. It's a values issue. And when people learn and live out good values, guess what? They become more valuable to themselves, and they become more valuable to their neighbor. And the result? They become bigger on the inside than they become on the outside. And that's what we're striving for. Through crisis, through difficulty, we're striving to become bigger on the inside than we are on the outside. So let's review quickly. A crisis is quite common. A crisis is distracting. A crisis reveals what is inside of us. And number 4, a crisis requires adaptability. You see, a crisis usually is a case study in uncertainty. That's true of the coronavirus. Nobody knows how long the outbreak is going to last, how bad it's going to be. But here's where leadership comes in. I've often said, I love sports, that all good coaches have a good pregame plan. In other words, as they go in the game, they have a pregame and how they would like the game to unfold, and they practice that pregame. They teach that pregame. But once the game starts, it may not at all be like the pregame plan. Now, all good coaches have a pregame plan, but the great coaches separate themselves at halftime. Because now they have a half, and now they see reality, not theory. Now they know what has happened, not what they thought would happen. And so they go into the halftime locker room, and what do? They adjust. It's their ability to, now that they know what's happening, to make decisions based on what they know, not what they thought. It's their ability to be flexible, adaptable, and create an environment that allows a new game plan, a plan B, if you will, that makes those great coaches. Most successful leaders have a plan B. And during a crisis, maybe even a plan C. Now, there's a profound difference. I teach this in my book on leadership. There's a profound difference between conformity and adaptability. Don't miss this because it fits right here in the crisis. Conformity, that's a negative quality. It's about blending in. It's about being like everyone else. It's a weakness that's based on fear and rejection. When a person conforms, to be honest with you, they don't want to be rejected. So they blend into the crowd. It's not a positive thing. Adaptability is a positive quality, and it's adjusting not out of weakness but out of strength. It's adjusting to succeed. It's adjusting to give you the ability to make the changes that will make you better. I had a wonderful golf game a couple years ago with Tom Watson. What an incredible golfer he has been in the past. And in fact, my claim to fame is on number 10 at Sugarloaf. I got a birdie and he got a par, literally, and I beat him by one stroke. And he noticed, he said, "John, you won that hole." And the good news, I won that one hole, and that means in the other 999 he wins. But the point being, we had an interesting conversation, and he told me, he said, there are only 5 tournaments. Now, this man won a lot of tournaments. He's one of the top 10 golfers ever. He said there are only 5 tournaments that on the first tee, the first day, I knew that I was going to win because my swing was just good, and I was just going to win. He said all the other tournaments, sometimes second round, third round, fourth round, I had to go back to the driving range and I had to make adjustments because my swing got out of kilter. And I had to, and I love this phrase, he said, I had to adjust my way to victory. Almost all of his tournament wins were not because he kept doing the same thing the same way and it was just perfect. He had to adjust his way. And in a crisis, that's what we do. As leaders, we help our people adjust their way to victory. Wow. Maybe you need to say to yourself or say to somebody that's in the room with you right now, I think I want to adjust my way. I want to adapt my way in this crisis. I'm going to be flexible. I'm going to be fluid. Point number 5. I'm giving you comments on crisis. And the 5th point is that a crisis is the time when real leaders show up. It's in a crisis that the real leaders become visible. You know, leadership is a visible presence. There is something that gives great security about people when they see their leader and the confidence, the calmness, the assuredness, the hope that that leader has. Recently, I was in Israel and we were with a man named Elliot who really has a major influence upon the military in that country. And if you know anything about the Israeli army, the officers don't lay back and send in the infantrymen and the soldiers. The officers lead the way into battle. In other words, Israeli military says officers go first. They're on the front line. By the way, the percentage of officers killed in a war in Israel is higher than the infantry and the soldiers. Why? Because they're on the front lines. And we were up on the Golan Heights, and we were having an incredible day there. We learned so much from Elliot. He was such a brilliant man. I mean, he spent all morning with us, and it was like a leadership learning off-the-charts course like I've hardly ever been in. And he made a statement while he was up there, and he was talking about doing battle, and he said, in war, the soldiers should always see the officer's back. In other words, there's something wrong if they're looking toward enemy territory and they don't see the back of the officer. That officer needs to be leading the way. In a crisis, that's what leaders show up during the crisis. Now, just let me have a little fun for a moment. While we're on the Golan Heights, we had about 50 people with us on this incredible tour. We got on a tank, literally could look over and see Syria. And so we got our picture taken on the tank, and we were kind of all macho, and then I decided to have some fun. Try to be unforgettable in any kind of memory you create. So I said, let's all sing the Hokey Pokey. And I kid you not, we all did the Hokey Pokey on an Israeli tank on the Golan Heights. And I looked at him assuredly and said, at the end, I said, trust me on this, This has never happened before. This was a first, no one else. And you ought to have seen the soldiers, you ought to have seen the military while these Americans were singing the Hokey Pokey on a tank. But here's the point. During a crisis, leaders show up. They're right there. They're early. They're the very first to go forward. You see, there are time-tested principles of a leader in a crisis, and the fact that they're open, they're honest, they're clear, and they're the first ones to stand up and to stand out. That's what leaders do during a crisis. Inc.com just last week had an article I read about Ed Bastian, who's the CEO of Delta, and it said Delta's CEO just sent out an email about the coronavirus that every customer should read. I thought, wow, I want to read it. And basically that he sent out, in the very beginning of this crisis, he said, let me just explain something at Delta. I want my customers, I want my passengers to know 3 things. We're prepared, we've learned, and we've taken action. That's a leader. A leader shows up early, before others, goes out front, is highly visible during a crisis. Why? Because that's when leadership is needed more than any other time. But when I talk about real leaders showing up, they not only show up early, they show up with clarity. Now, uncertainty in a crisis is a fact of life. And uncertainty, as my friend Andy Stanley would tell you, is not an indication of poor leadership. It's just an indication that there's a need for leadership. And so leaders are leading in uncertainty. So what that means is we don't always have the answer. I don't really particularly appreciate leaders that are kind of like Mr. Answer Man or Miss Answer Woman, and they are constantly saying, hey, I've got the answers, come to me, come to me. No, I think there are a lot of times as leaders, we are highly uncertain. We are in territory we have never been before. We've never had a virus like this before. There's a lot of uncertainty in the air. But uncertainty is different than clarity. We can be uncertain about what's happening around us, but we can be very certain. We can be very clear about hope. Hey, this too shall pass. Because people are not going to follow fuzzy leadership. And we have to have the courage to be able to say, I don't see all the answers, I don't know all the answers, but I do know the direction I think we should be going. And you begin to create the movement. Because what happens is clarity helps people prioritize. You see, the coronavirus is a condition that we had no control over. So now we can't control something outside of us, but we can control the choices that we make. And prioritizing what we should do during uncertain times is one of the most important responsibilities for a leader. I mean, let's just think of Noah for a moment. Just think of Noah. If the ark is sinking, the first animal that Noah's going to go to is the elephant. It's just going to pay off to get the elephant off the boat. They have clarity, they have priority. And then leaders, I'll tell you what else they do. They not only show up early, they not only show up with clarity, but they show up with hope. They show up with hope. Again, I've just come back from Israel, and I had a tremendous learning leadership experience for myself and people that went with me. And I'm going to read what Jonathan Sachs said, because this is very important about leaders having the ability to show hope to other people. Here's what he said. One of the most important distinctions I have learned from Jewish history is the difference between optimism and hope. Optimism is the belief that things will get better. Hope is the faith that together we can make things better. You see, optimism is a passive virtue. Hope is an active virtue. It takes no courage to be an optimist, but it takes a great deal of courage to have hope. I love that. We offer hope, not because we're just positive thinkers. We offer hope because we're willing to do something together. That's why I leaped at this opportunity when the John Maxwell has said, let's get to the John Maxwell team, because to be honest with you, today we're supposed to be in Orlando with 3,000 John Maxwell team coaches. Of course, we're not doing that. So what did? We were handed a lemon. We made lemonade. We said, well, let's go live to our John Maxwell team coaches. And then as we began to think about it, we said, well, why just keep it with John Maxwell team coaches? Why not open it up to everybody? Because we got a lot of friends out there. Tens and tens of thousands of you are watching me right now. And the reason that we're coming together is because this is where leadership shows up. And by the way, Mark Cole, who introduced me, who is an owner in the company and CEO of the whole John Maxwell Enterprises, I was so proud of him because he was in Israel with me when all of this really began to come to a peak. And I was so proud of him because I watched him have that clarity. I watched him begin to talk to the John Maxwell team tribe. I watched him as he kept hope in front of things. And my observation about Mark Cole was this, that he was in constant communication with his team. In fact, every night after we'd be done finishing our tours, he would go to his room, and 2-3 hours every night, he'd be back to the States talking to the team, making sure that everybody was on the same page. And he also used his team. He delegated. It was huge. He delegated authority wonderfully. It was just amazing what he did. He constantly asked them questions. He got them involved. They took ownership, and he was very deliberate in his thinking. Very deliberate. Now, I've mentored him for 20 years, and I'll take credit for deliberate. Because the last thing people need in a crisis is for the leader to get emotionally caught up in a crisis. That's why I said that leader keeps his or her head above the crowd. You are in the crowd, but you're not of the crowd. Never forget that. And I watched Mark as he was deliberate in his thinking, and every day he kind of used me for a sounding board, and I did my best to be a sounding board. You see, for many years, because Mark has run my enterprises for a long time, we've had what we call the 3-2 count. You know, in baseball, if a batter has a 3-2 count, 3 balls, 2 strikes, that means when the pitcher throws this next ball, something's going to happen. There's going to be a hit. There's going to be an out. There's going to be a strikeout. Something's going to happen. All pitches are important, but that pitch on the 3-2 count is the most important. And so Mark, when he was running the company, because he was close to all of them, he would once in a while say, "John, we've got a 3-2 count issue," and he'd pull me in, and we'd talk about it, and then he would make the decision, but I would come in to help him. And this was a 3-2 kind of conversation we had in Israel. We knew that every day was becoming even more important with this crisis. But I watched him, and I watched him do really well with the 3-2 count. I was so proud of his leadership. Let me just say something that I could add to him that and an experienced leader can add. And this is just, leaders, write this real quick. You see, you and I, when we make decisions, especially during a crisis, we need to make what I call PGE decisions. The P stands for pains. What's the potential huge loss in this situation? The G stands for gains. What's the upside? What's the potential win in this situation? But the letter E is all about experience. And the question for leaders during crisis time is, how much experience do you have leading in a crisis? Because in a crisis, intuition, sensing what to do, timing, sensing when to do it, all that comes in. And all of that is birthed out of practice of leadership in experiences. You see, explaining why you make a decision sometimes is as important as what the decision is, because it's in the why that other people are trained and developed. And I watched Mark, and his thinking and his decisions aligned with his values. You know, Roy Disney, Walt's brother, said, "When you know what your values are, it's easy to make decisions." And in the John Maxwell team, I watched Mark do this, because in the John Maxwell team, people are the highest value. In fact, what we teach our John Maxwell team members is very simple. We are people of value who value people and add value to them. That's what we do. We're people of value who value you, and then we intentionally go out and we add value to you in any way possible. You see, a crisis exaggerates the negative, and good leaders deal with as much of the negative before it happens as they possibly can. Quick story. When I wrote the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, we went on a tour for 1 week using a private jet, 3 cities every day, started on the East Coast, 21 cities in 1 week. Breakfast at one location, lunch at another, dinner at another, talking about the book. By the time we were out in Dallas, the book was already a bestseller on the list. And we were all excited because we'd put a heavy weekend. We're coming back in, and we were flying into Atlanta. And about 50 feet from the ground, we hit a wind shear. And literally that private plane of ours just immediately dropped and hit the runway. It just like that. And immediately we were all frightened because that we didn't land, we dropped. There's a difference between landing and dropping. And what's interesting is as soon as that wheel and that drop hit that runway, the pilot took the plane right back up in the air. I mean, immediately. I mean, so quick that any fear that we had was kind of like, oh, wow, whew, we're still in the air. Circled, came back in, landed the plane. We got off the plane, and I went over and kissed the ground, congratulated the pilot, and I said, it was amazing that you could make a decision that fast. I mean, those wheels hit that runway, and you were back in it. It's amazing that kind of a decision that you could make. And so I'm talking to him about it, and he looks at me, and he said, look, John, he said, you don't understand. And I said, what don't I understand? He said, what you don't understand is I made that decision 20 years ago. He said, as a pilot, I've gone through everything I can possibly think of that can be a problem. And I always said, what will I do in that situation? And I have a game plan for every problem. And he said, my game plan was if I land, I'll land well, get back up in the air, because he said the air has a lot more room for mistakes than the ground does. And he was right on that. Well, what am I saying about it? Great leaders, they think things through on the front end. And when the sea is not smooth, remember this, no sailor ever distinguished himself on a smooth sea. The distinguishing part is what you do during the rough times. By the way, it's true of every leader. You look at the great leaders in the history of the world, and they all took their people through a time of crisis successfully. Lincoln, Churchill, 9/11, Giuliani, Martin Luther King. You see, the synonym of great crisis is great leadership. And what I'm so proud is that Mark put the people before everything else. Huge financial loss in making some of the decisions that were made. But Mark every day kept his values where they needed to be. And his top value was what's best for the people. And when you think of leadership in a crisis, that is always the question. And the decision is always what's right for the people. Now, sometimes during a crisis, you're not sure what's right, so you've got to hold as long as you can hold. But there'll be a time that it will begin to open up, and you'll begin to know what your next move is. Now, if I could have about 7 more minutes, I have a great desire during this coronavirus to really speak in your life. And so Mark talked about the fact that the next 3 days, Monday and Tuesday, I'm going to be doing a lesson. And the lesson I'm going to be doing is how to turn adversity into an advantage. I'm going to do a part 1 on Monday, part 2 on Tuesday. Don't miss it. In fact, bring your friends and be with it, because I'm going to really basically say the stuff that we're experiencing right now, let me tell you how you can make, well, lemonade out of that lemon. And that's going to be for you. I want you to be with us these next 2 days. Be sure to let everybody else know. But I also want you to connect with me on so many ways that are free. For example, we have Minute with Maxwell every day. I do a Minute with Maxwell. It's a video. And it's just 1 minute, and millions of people get it. I want you to have it. And especially I want you to have it for the next 30 days, because guess what I did? I have just put out 30 statements of strength that are designed for the next 30 days to just give you an upper, just a lift. So tell your friends, get on Minute with Maxwell for the next 30 days, and every day I'll give you a statement of strength that I promise you will make you feel better, see better. It'll just lift your spirits. Don't miss it. And then for audio, I want to encourage you, this is free. Go to the John Maxwell Leadership Podcast.com. Every week, we take leadership teachings and apply it to people's lives. And literally millions of people are following us on the podcast, but I'm missing you. I want you to be on that podcast with me. Again, it's a free resource. John Maxwell Leadership Podcast.com. And then I want to encourage you to read my blog, because if you just go to johnmaxwell.com, you can every day kind of just pick up things that I'm talking about that will help you, again, to become a better leader. But now for the next 5 minutes, I just want to talk to you from my heart. Because here's what I know about a crisis. A crisis never leaves us the same. And during the crisis, we long for normal. Oh, I wish it was like it was before this crisis hit. And we kind of try to get through the crisis, and what we make the mistake is when we get through it, things will return to normal. And I just want you to know that this is a difficult time that we're in, and we want to get back to normal, but the reality is normal has been changed, and it's not going to be the same when we get through this crisis. Wow. Think of the students that are no longer in school but are online. This is going to change a lot of the way that education begins to look at how they're going to equip kids. Trust me, you give kids a few months just being online, and there's going to be some changes made there. You know, there's loss of jobs. Some of you, I tell you, I just pray constantly for people that are in financial ruin, loss of jobs, or you go back and your job has changed, and so you've got some major adjustments there. There's going to be a tremendous financial strain. Normal isn't going to be like we thought it was going to be. That's what I want you to catch. And so Max Dupree again said the first responsibility of a leader is to help people define reality, and the second responsibility of the leader is to help people then make positive changes. And that's where I'm coming right now. Normal is not going to be the same when you get back. So what I want to do for a moment is say, what can I do to help you get through this crisis? Because I've been through a lot of them. I'm 73. In the 1960s, I saw the assassinations of John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King. I saw the assassinations of leaders. I was in high school and college in the most turbulent decade in America's history, the 1960s. In the 1970s, the disillusionment of Vietnam and misuse of men and people and lives from government. And in the 1980s, it was the AIDS epidemic, and then there was a huge economic recession. And in the 1990s, what did we have? We had corporate wrongdoing. Hey, do you remember Enron? Remember all the companies that weren't living up to the values that they had and they said that they were living up to? In fact, Time Warner was my publisher at that time, and they asked me to write a book entitled There's No Such Thing as Business Ethics. And I shared with them there isn't. You either have ethics or you don't. But I lived through the ethics crisis, and then 9/11, of course, that crisis that we all can remember, and now the 2008 recession, now this virus. And what I want you to understand is, I've seen a lot of crises. I hope to live long enough to see some more, because life is uphill. Life is messy. Always has been. Always will. But when I look at this crisis and I see that things are out of control, what I try to do is try to help people get control of their life. They're out of control around you, but I want you to get control of your life on the inside. And what are some of the positive changes and controls and decisions you can make? Decisions such as personal growth, your willingness to grow yourself, training. You see, the only guarantee that tomorrow is going to get better, the only guarantee is that you and I are growing today. So after the 2008, 9, 10 recession, I began to ask myself, how can I help people get control of their lives? And that's when I started the John Maxwell team. And when I looked at the John Maxwell team, I said to myself, people need three things. They need training. They need good teaching. They need a good faculty, somebody that has experience, that's good at what they do. And they need me to certify them. They need to have somebody come along them and put their arm around them and say, look, what we're doing is going to help this person, and I'm going to lend my influence, my credibility, my legacy to them. And so we started the John Maxwell team. We train basically in 5 areas. We train in leadership, entrepreneurship, coaching, speaking, and sales. We have these 5 incredible lanes with great faculty members. We've got a dream team. And by the way, what sets our faculty apart is they're successful. They aren't theorists. They aren't people that say how it could be done or should be done. They're people that are constantly doing it. And we certified these people. In fact, we've certified 33,000 coaches around the world. And because I give them my name, it gives them credibility. It gives them opportunity. It gives them a lot of authority in their lives. And everywhere. Okay, let me tell you what my joy is. By the way, when I started the John Maxwell team, the biggest question I had was, should I really, give them my name? Because what happens if somebody just screws it up and messes up? And I passed that. I passed that by saying to myself, I would rather add value to people, and every once in a while have someone misuse my name, than withdraw adding value to people and being safe all by myself. So I made a decision. I would lend John Maxwell team members my name. They could be John Maxwell certified. Now, can I tell you what my joy is? Everywhere I travel, around the world, wherever I speak, Wherever I meet leaders, I have John Maxwell team members show up, and they are the joy of my life. And the reason they're the joy of my life is because they're adding value to people. And when I go into countries, they're telling us what the John Maxwell team members are doing, because we are people of value, and we do add value to people. So I have just a few questions I want to ask you now. Ask yourself as I'm going through these questions. Do you want to take adversity and make it an opportunity? Do you want more for yourself and for your family? Do you want a new career, or maybe a way to supplement what you already are doing? And the most important question, do you want to be part of a community? Do you want to be a part of a community that makes a positive difference? Now, if you're saying yes, I want to have more for myself and my family. Yes, I would maybe like to help supplement my income, especially with the financial strain going on, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, I want to be part of a community that's making a positive. If you're saying yes to those things, 2 more questions, just very simply. I'd like to join my team, because I'd sure like to have you. Now, let me just stop here for a moment. You may already be on a good team. Blessings, love, go for it. All the success in the world. I'm not trying to pull you away from anything. I am trying to add value to you. If you'd like to be part of a community that's truly making a difference, then I would like to ask you a second question. Would you be willing to invest 30 minutes to know more about the John Maxwell team? 30 minutes. Would you be willing to do that? If you would, I want to encourage you greatly to go to johnmaxwell.com. And there we will begin to help you. We will begin to direct you. We will begin to lead you to somebody that can tell you a lot more about the team and how you can be a part of it. And I'm going to ask you, Mark, was that the place to take them?
JohnMaxwellTeam.com.
Yeah, johnmaxwellteam.com. Thank you, Mark. John Maxwell Team. If you just go to that, and by the way, we have people ready to help you, and if they can't help you immediately, don't give up on us. Come back, because we really would like to help you find your place. Now, as I wrap up our time together, I want to thank you. I want to thank you because you have invested over an hour listening to me talk to you about how to lead through a crisis. Early this morning, I'm a person of faith, you know that. Early this morning, I got up and I spent quite a bit of time alone. And to be honest with you, I felt a little overwhelmed. It's very probable that there'll be hundreds of thousands of people that will get this information and listen to my teaching. And that's a lot of people, and that's a lot of weight, and that's a lot of responsibility. So I asked God to help me. And I felt such peace and such confidence that He would help me. But the only reason I prayed that prayer was because it was for you. I really want more for you than perhaps you even want for yourself. Maybe not, but for many, that's true. What I want for you during this time is for you to do more than survive, because we're going to survive. I want you to, this may be too far out a word, this may be too positive, but I'd like you to thrive. What I really mean by that is I would like for you to do well for yourself, for your family, for your community. I would like it to be a time where you're growing and learning, and yes, you're adjusting things. In fact, I told my wife, Margaret, the other day, I said, well, I'm going to get more time to write my book. I'm going to get more time to read some books I haven't been able to read. And then I looked at her and said, I'm also going to get time to clean out my closet. It's 3 years, and I haven't cleaned out my closet yet. Got to go clean out my closet. But what I want is during this time for you to realize that this is a time that you can get better. And that big people get bigger during difficult times. And there's just one more thing I want you to know before I sign off. And that is, my name's John, and I'm your friend. And I love you. I want the best for you. I pray over you. Stay with me for the next couple of days, okay? I'll do my best to help lift the load. God bless.